time why I love this car so much. That's why. What's going on, YouTube? First off, let me apologize for one, the shakiness of the camera. This thing's not the most smooth car in the world. And two, the exhaust note. I'm trying to keep it as quiet as possible so you guys can hear me, but I have a feeling that no matter what I do, you're gonna hear the godliness from the back of this thing. Depending on how long you've been following me, you know this is my all-time dream car, and I was able to buy it in June of 2019. Brand new, spec'd it out. Huge shout out to Ramsey once again. So, 5,000 miles, 2.5 years, I figure I can do a long-term ownership review of the 911 GT3RS. First things first, spec. 4-liter, 6-cylinder, pushing out right around 520 horsepower, 350 torque, I believe. Doesn't sound like much by today's standards of supercars, but we only weigh 3,000 pounds. And this car is not really a straight line car. It's more about how fast can you get around the corners. This is currently the 6th fastest car around the Nürburgring in the world. All of a sudden, those lower horsepower and torque numbers don't really matter, do they? This thing is all about the driver's experience. We're naturally aspirated, which means I can... immediate power, immediate torque. No waiting for the turbos to spool up like in the 2RS. And the sound. And I know it might not make sense, but the sound is by far the most important part of this car. I would say that 50% of the enjoyment of driving this car is hearing that motor. Don't get me wrong, the 2RS can sound good, but it ends up sounding like a turbo diesel at its loudest. This thing absolutely screams. I've never heard a car sound anything like this. I have the AWE switch path exhaust on it, and if you're looking at buying one of these or you own any GT car really, I would say if you are running a stock exhaust, you are literally missing out on 50% of the fun of this car. My favorite part about this car is the driving experience. It is a track car that was repurposed for the road. It's loud, it's noisy, it clunks and rattles, you can hear the transmission. Sometimes I can hear fluid, don't even know where it's going, but I can hear fluid moving around. Virtually no insulation, and we have plexiglass in the rear, which means it's even louder in here than normal. The people buying these cars, myself included, I think are looking for that track car experience on the road. This is a car that I could put 150 miles on the road driving up Dakota, and then do 20 laps without having to worry about anything, and then turn around and drive it back home. Very few cars can do that. You try that in your McLaren, you will have a flatbed towing you before you even get to Austin, don't even mention the track. I have pushed this thing, I would say close to its limits, or at least as close as you can get on public roads, and never had an issue. Not once is anything broken, not once am I worried about something breaking. When I am driving a Ferrari, for example, I am very hesitant to push it to redline. This thing lives at redline. It needs to be at redline. All of the power is up over 6,000 anyway. And you almost have to retrain your brain a little bit driving it. In a normal car, I should shift. I can downshift still. In a normal car, you're about to blow the motor. No, I have 3,000 RPM left to play with. And the fact that it revs to 9,000 RPM means that the lack of power and stuff doesn't really matter because you're not shifting it. Let's go into the transmission. By far the best transmission of any car I've ever owned, and I will venture to say the best transmission on the market right now. In manual mode, it's manual. It'll let you redline it, it'll let you blow the motor. I haven't tested that, but I believe it'll let you blow the motor. And I, as the driver, have full control. None of that BMW bullshit where like you put it in manual, but it's not really in manual, it's still kind of doing everything for you. When this is in manual mode, it's a manual. And when I want to drive it more calmly, the transmission picks up on that. You take it out of sport mode, and then it just kind of sits at 7th gear at all times. I have never in my life driven a car with a snappier, more responsive, and well-trained transmission than the PDK in the RS. If you pull both paddles in at the same time, you engage the clutch. And when you drop it, You can actually drop the clutch, same as you would in a manual car. Something a lot of owners of these cars don't know that exists. Not really usable in day-to-day driving, but when you're going under an underpass, very nice to be able to throw it up to 9,000 and make everyone pissed off, and then just go back to driving. Lamborghinis technically do the same thing, but they go into neutral when you pull both paddles, and then you have to shift back out. The Porsche is just a clutch, and when you drop it, you're going right back to where you were. At speed, this car is so goddamn good. No one that has ever driven this car has thought, I like the Ferrari better, I like the Lamborghini better. I think it takes a little bit to get the Ferrari and Lamborghini enthusiasts into this thing, but once you're in it, holy shit. There's probably 2 other cars in the world that I've driven that have given me this experience. One is the 675 LT, which I think is now the 765 LT. I haven't driven that one yet. McLaren is very good at making a track car. Unfortunately, McLaren's not very good at making a car in general, and I've literally never driven a McLaren that didn't have an issue, and I'm terrified to beat on them because they just kind of fall apart. So the only other car that I would consider remotely similar in feeling and everything to this would be a 488 Pista. I have driven the 488 Pista, and god damn is that a fast car, but it's still nimble, it's still raw, it still kind of gives me that track car feeling. Outside of those 2 cars, and obviously the 2RS, I don't think there's a single car on the market that puts up a fight against this thing. And neither one of those cars would I trust to drive on a 4,000-mile road trip like I would the 911. These things are literally bulletproof, which how you build an engine that revs to 9,000 and then also make it as reliable as a diesel, I have no clue. Porsche's got some voodoo magic going on in their workshop. Interior-wise, it's perfection. I've given like bad points to some cars that have way too much buttons and shit going on, and then I've also been kind of critical of like BMW for trying to be a driver's car but still kind of fucking up the layout. Porsche is the perfect car when it comes to modeling how you lay out the dash and all that for. The 992, potentially better, but this is really freaking good. The way that everything's laid out, the way it's centered around the driver, there's no extra buttons that don't need to be there, there's no screens that don't need to be there. Quality is great. Like I said before, it rattles and it shakes and stuff, but that's part of owning a GT car, having a big ass motor right under you and basically no insulation and very stiff suspension. If you got like a Turbo S, it would be a very comfortable daily drive. We still have an analog tach, thank God. We have an analog speedometer. We have one screen in the dash, and it really just shows you like auxiliary information. We have an Alcantara wrapped steering wheel, headliner, shifter, seat. Pretty much everything that you touch in the car is Alcantara, which is good and bad. Right now it's about 98 degrees here in Texas, and my back is on fire. I am sweating a storm up. I opted for the full carbon back bucket seats, which I also have in the Spider. They're phenomenal seats. I think if you're an older guy or you're a little bit overweight, I probably wouldn't recommend them. The stereo system, for a $235,000 car, it's pretty shitty. But also, why do you need a stereo when you have that? I appreciate that this thing doesn't have a heads-up display and it doesn't have screens everywhere. I can still, if I wanted to, accidentally swerve this into another car on the highway. Unlike the RS6 that I recently sold, it would stop me from switching lanes if I was within 20 feet of the car in front of me, and literally almost got me in accidents because of its safety features. This thing is you and the machine. There's nothing interfering with it. You can turn the traction control all the way off. You can throw it up to red line. It doesn't care. It'll do whatever you want, which is getting more and more rare nowadays. With the newer regulations and shit, these cars have so much technology and so many safety features and cylinder deactivation and all that shit, where this guy has none of that. It's just a really, really good motor with a really, really good chassis, and you do whatever the hell you want with it, have fun. I can't thank Porsche enough for keeping this car true to what it was and not turning it into some bullshit. So, you know how good it is to drive. It sounds incredible, it feels incredible, it makes you a little giddy inside, which is probably why it's my favorite car of all time. In all the reviews and stuff I do, I always say that the driving experience is more important than anything else. That's what I'm more concerned about than anything. Someone will always be faster than you. There's always some asshole with a twin-turbo perf or a Bugatti. So if you can't be the fastest guy on the street, why not be the happiest guy on the street? And nothing in the world, I think, makes you feel the same as a GT3RS. It doesn't matter if it's a 997, 991.2, 991. Hopefully the 992. They're all just, they have something about them that's just... But if I had to say there's one other thing about this car that I'd probably say is right up there with the driving experience, it's the visuals. It's the look from the outside. It's the way that this guy is probably staring at it right now saying, holy shit, what is that? There's just something about this car that is... Let's take a look. So the outside of this thing is absolutely menacing. Just the way it comes down the road, like the road presence, it sits super low. It's wide as absolute shit. It's got the same body panels on it as a Turbo S. A wide front track, sits a decent amount lower to the ground. And that carbon fiber hood that comes with the Y-Stock package just gives you this like race car feeling. Speaking of the Y-Stock package, you get a carbon fiber hood, roof, mirror caps, and the wing on the rear. It is an $18,000 option, and you save, I believe it was like 9 pounds. Sounds like it's worth it to me. All in all, I just love the way this thing looks. Like, I don't think anything else really, it looks like a true track car. It's so much more aggressive than I think like a Huracan or something like that. You bring this into a car show and people immediately are just like, holy shit. I absolutely love this car. There's something so special about the GT3RS, and I know I've said that over and over and over, but I'm still, a lot of times you buy a car and like a year after you own it, or even maybe 3 months after you buy it, you're like, did I really need to buy this car? Perfect example, the RS6. I thought I was gonna love that car, I bought it, and after, you know, a couple months of driving, and I'm like, it's a very expensive car, and I'm not really enjoying it as much as I thought I would, so I'm gonna let it go. This, 2.5 years after I took it off the showroom floor, I still get the exact same smile when I started up. I still feel exactly the same way about this car than before I bought it. Not typically how it happens. Most of you know, you think a car is gonna be the most crazy thing in the world, and then you get it, and then it's what's next. For me, this was like, this is the end all. So, thank you guys for watching this video. Smash that subscribe button down below. And comment down below what you think of the GT3RS. And I know typically I don't review my own cars until I'm getting ready to sell them, and that's for another video. It's hot outside. I don't know why the hell I'm doing this right now. I should just wait until winter. It could be like a bear, but the opposite. Like, I'll hibernate through the summer, disappear on YouTube, and then I'll make a comeback in the winter. I don't know why I live. It's so goddamn hot. Like, when someone's always like, "Oh, why don't you make more car reviews?" By myself. I gotta move the camera around nonstop. It is 102 degrees. I think the heat index is 107. I'm literally, this is just from moving the camera around outside the car and then getting back in the car. I need to move to Switzerland. Cars with Luke looks like he's having a great time when he reviews these cars. I am just like slowly dying and melting.